Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Director of the Department of Defense Military Working Dog Veterinary Services, I welcome you to today's dedication ceremony for the Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherman Mathey Diagnostic Imaging Suite. Today's ceremony will be conducted as an inside ceremony. As such, no headgear or salutes need to be rendered. We would like to take a moment to welcome members of the Mathey family, our honored guests, friends, former directors of the Holland Military Working Dog Hospital, and distinguished leaders to include Brigadier General Retired Poppy, Brigadier General Retired Toring, Colonel Webster, Colonel Schlanzer, Colonel Retired Greiner, Colonel Bodenstein, Lieutenant Colonel Newman, Command Sergeant Major Davis, and Command Master Sergeant Thomas, as well as other brigade and battalion commanders and command sergeants major. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the invocation given by Colonel Retired Walter Burkhart, and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem.
Will you join me in prayer? Dear good and gracious Father, we gather here today first to acknowledge your goodness, grace, and mercy, and our need for you. Sherm asked me to remind you of that. We also gather to thank you for blessing us with Sherm Mathey. Some of us were honored to call Sherm a friend during his time with us. Hollywood, Good Buddy, Catfish. But everyone in the working dog community has been touched by the service and legacy of Sherm Mathey. As we dedicate the radiology department of Lieutenant Colonel Daniel E. Holland Military Working Dog Hospital in the name of Lieutenant Colonel Sherm Mathey, we ask your continued blessings on the healing work of the hospital, on the canine warriors which we serve, and on the men and women who dedicate their lives to the protection of the United States, and especially for those in harm's way. We ask these good things in your holy name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Today we will officially dedicate the Radiology Military Working Dog Hospital, the Radiology Suite of the Military Working Dog Hospital in memory of Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherm Mathey. The official memorialization process was a joint effort initiated more than 2 years ago. In addition to confirmation of Sherm's exemplary and honorary service in the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, and as a Department of the Army civilian, The review process required endorsement at the highest levels of command in both the Army and Air Force before final approval on September 12, 2025 by Major General Quinn, Deputy Commander, Air Education and Training Command, Department of the Air Force. We will now have the pleasure of honoring Sherm Mathey by hearing comments from current leaders and loved ones of Sherm. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander of Public Health Command West, Colonel Chan Webster.
Hey, what a great day. Apologize that the air conditioning isn't working this morning. That's part of being in Texas, right? Our air conditioning isn't 100%, so I really apologize for that. So my speech won't be long, but I did want a chance to acknowledge all the great things that's happened here today. So again, it's my distinct honor to speak with you guys today as the Public Health Command West Commander in recognition of Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherman Mathey, a man whose extraordinary career and selfless service have profoundly shaped the mission we carry forward here at the Holland Veterinary Hospital and across the veterinary corps in general. Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's life was one of unwavering dedication to the military and to the care of others. From his early service in the Marine Corps, leading troops in the Battle of Hue City during Vietnam War, to his transformative contributions as a veterinarian in the Army Veterinary Corps. His legacy is one of excellence, compassion, and commitment. As the higher headquarters of Holland Veterinary Hospital, Public Health Command West recognizes the strategic and operational importance of Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's work. The Military Working Dog Veterinary Facility, the Lieutenant Colonel Daniel E. Holland Military Working Dog Hospital, plays a critical role in supporting both military and homeland security missions. This premier facility leads and mentors a team of 25 military, 23 civilian, and 19 contract personnel, ensuring the highest standards of care and readiness for our nation's working dogs. The hospital facilitates the procurement of working dogs worldwide and provides primary referral health care for over 800 Department of War and TSA working dogs at Lackland Air Force Base that we're currently sitting in, while also offering consultation and referral care for over 2,500 military working dogs globally. Additionally, the dog policy and doctrine and veterinary issues supporting the U.S. Army MedCom and DHA and the Veterinary Corps, Chief Corps, the hospital supported the TSA military working dogs mission in accordance with the interagency agreements. Further underscores the critical role in safeguarding our nation. Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's pioneering advancements in diagnostic imaging were instrumental in achieving and establishing the hospital's state-of-the-art capabilities that we have today. The diagnostic imaging suite, equipped with X-ray, ultrasound, and even CT technologies, which is pretty incredible, enables precise and timely diagnosis that are essential for maintaining the health and operational readiness of the military working dogs. These animals are indispensable partners in military and homeland security operations, saving lives and ensuring mission success. Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's expertise in radiology and ensuring ultrasonography laid the foundation of these capabilities, ensuring the hospital remains at the forefront of veterinary care. But Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's impact extended far beyond his technical contributions. He was a teacher, a mentor, an advocate for the youngest members of our military. His dedication to training and mentorship ensured that the next generation of veterinarians and soldiers were equipped to succeed, both professionally and personally. His belief in the importance of nurturing others is a value we continue to uphold in our mission today. Lieutenant Colonel Mathey's legacy also reflects the deep compassion and selflessness of his service. He dedicated his time to this organization, like the Wounded Warrior Project and the Center of the Intrepid, embodying the values of service and care that define the Army and the Vet Corps traditions. His efforts touched countless lives, leaving a lasting impact on those who led and privileged of getting to know him. As we reflect on his life and his contributions, let us remember Lieutenant Colonel Mathey not only for his remarkable achievements, but also for the values he lived by: service, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to others. His work at the Holland Veterinary Hospital and his devotion to the Military Working Dog Program continue to inspire us today and guide us on our mission always. So on behalf of Public Health Command West, we truly honor Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherman Mathey's memory and recommitment ourselves to carry his values forward that he held so dear. His legacy is a reminder of the profound impact that one individual can have on the lives of others and on the success of our mission. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for being part of this dedication.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander of Public Health Command East and Chief of the United States Army Veterinary Corps, Colonel Justin Slancer.
All right, I'll keep my distance from the microphone to keep it legitimate. So, first of all, to all the esteemed leaders in the room, my fellow veterinary corps chiefs, the leaders of the Holland Hospital, Public Health Command West, and also representatives from the 341st Training Squadron. Most importantly, though, to the Mathey family, thank you for being here today for what truly is an amazing dedication that was many years in the making, and honestly, we probably should have made many years ago. So I appreciate your attendance here today to help honor Colonel Mathey. I'd like to reflect just briefly, if you permit me, on the current state of the Veterinary Corps as it is my role and the future of the veterinary service, and more importantly, how Colonel Mathey related to that. I may say Doc Mathey every now and then because this is how I knew him. So, first of all, I think that the lights in the room are a little too bright, perhaps, for a tribute to a diagnostic imager. Usually when I find the diagnostic imagers, they're in a closet or a corner somewhere, only illuminated by the fluorescent glow that comes off of a few X-rays illuminated on a screen. So we'll have to compensate for that potentially later. But I do appreciate the ability to be able to speak here today on him. When I think about when Doc Mathey began his career, what the profession of veterinary radiology was and what it is today, I think it's very analogous to what we see going on in our force and in our military working dog program moving forward. I imagine Doc Mathey probably picking the first radiograph he ever viewed out of a vat of very toxic chemicals, letting it dry and throwing it on a screen, and then potentially having to take that picture again because the lighting wasn't quite right, and continuing along in the same fashion until it was just perfect enough for him to read and render a diagnosis. Well, today you can do radiology from your basement. We can have images sent to you from around the world, and we're moving at a speed of technology that's just as prompt to influence veterinary medicine, but also military working dog operations as we go forward. And so I'd like to acknowledge here today the very real impact that an individual like Doc Mathey had, not just on the profession, but also on the operations of military working dogs and the practice of military veterinary medicine. Doc Mathey, you need to look no further than this room to see the influence that this gentleman had. Those here who are in uniform, those here who have hung up the uniform, all of them together have been influenced by Doc Mathey, even if they hadn't had the opportunity to directly work with him. The procedures and the cutting edge of both technology and of policy that he set through his work here at the Holland Hospital has informed military working dog readiness all the way through the present day and likely will for the foreseeable future. The readiness of these animals, I think, is important, not just here, but is paramount to our next evolution of the Army and next evolution of veterinary medicine in the military, as a focus on readiness in a unique and changing and threatening environment is always going to be one of the most important things that we do as military veterinarians as we prepare these animals for the force. These animals save lives. So whether directly or indirectly, Doc Mathey has saved lives. There's numerous individuals who are here today because of a military working dog. Occasionally, those working dogs sacrificed in order to allow their handler to come home to their family. For that, it's the readiness and it's the impact that an individual like Doc Mathey had that has allowed that very sacred trust to take place. He was a curator of not just veterinary medicine. He was a pioneer in this field. He was a mentor. He was also a very important curator of the human-animal bond in allowing that most unique of soldier bonds to happen, that between a canine handler and his military working dog. So I'd like to thank all of us here today, but most importantly, the family of Doc Mathey for allowing us to borrow him for what seems to be most of his life. He seems to have a career longer than most, because we know how much of a sacrifice that is. That's time that's been probably missed birthdays and maybe other missed family events along the way where he was in service to something bigger than himself, which I think was the only way that he could lead his life in this arena. So please accept my most heartfelt thank you on behalf of the entire active service of the Veterinary Corps for Doc Mathey's service, for the legacy that he leaves here at the Holland Veterinary Hospital, and for the contributions he's going to make to the future of military working dog operations that are going to echo through the education, the mentorship, and the care of those animals as we move forward. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. Thank you very much for the time, and let's enjoy it. And we could turn the lights down potentially at the end to get a little more of a radiology tribute to Doc Mathey. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Retired George Moore, former Director of the Department of Defense Military Working Dog Veterinary Services, 1996 to 2000, and close friend of the Mathey family.
Let me get all this adjusted to include the spectacles. So to the Lee, the family down there, and the many friends who are here. You know, it's an honor and a pleasure to be asked to speak today at this very special dedication event for a very special individual. Perhaps other than his family, I knew Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherman Mathey, Sherm, or Doc Mathey, as he indeed was known. I knew him longer and closer perhaps than any other Army veterinarian or those in the working dog community. Yes, I served on active duty from 1979 to 2002. It was actually in 1978 that I first met Sherm. I stopped as a veterinary student at the Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri Veterinary Treatment Facility where Sherm was the OIC. I was seeking a location that I could do some clinical work once I graduated from Tennessee, and I had heard that Fort Leonard Wood was such a place. I had indeed requested Leonard Wood as this initial assignment and arrived there in September of '79 after attending the officer basic course at Fort Sam Houston here in San Antonio. Sherm was still the clinic OIC, and I learned then that he had decided to separate from active duty and join Dr. Art Bryant in mixed veterinary practice off-post in Waynesville, Missouri, the county seat. Now, I remember thinking, I don't know how well this will work out, because even in those days, there's some tension between civilian and military veterinarians as to who's doing what. But Art and Sherm covered the top half of the county, and I had the bottom half of the county, which was Fort Leonard Wood. It was at that time that I also found this was the beginning of a great and long friendship as I met the Lee, his three then small sons, Darren, or Angus as he was known, also Kevin and Ian. I was single back then. I lived in the BOQ on post, and his family befriended me as the new kid, the new veterinarian on the block. Although Sherm was busy in mixed animal practice, he and I did many things together due to our common love for horses and all things equine. for our compassion in veterinary medicine and connection with the military. I also learned at that time of his Vietnam experiences as he had served there as Marine Second Lieutenant. I'd learned that in his first week in country, within just a few days of arriving, he was in charge of a convoy which came under attack. He obviously, in that time and so on, he recounted the gunfire started and his platoon sergeant yelled, "Stick with me, sir." And he did, and obviously he survived his time there without physical injury. But I know he always spoke highly of the enlisted and NCO military members that served with him and would serve in the future with him. Well, after 3 years at Fort Leonard Wood, I PCSed overseas and then returned here in the fall of '85 to work at the Military Working Dog Veterinary Facility. In that relatively short period of time, Sherm had stayed in the Army Reserves, but had also determined that a return to active duty was best. The Veterinary Corps was also recognizing the need for specialists to support the working dog program. And Sherm had agreed to take a 2-year assignment to get a master's degree in veterinary radiology at the veterinary school at Texas A&M. Now, this program was a first, and it was actually facilitated by radiology faculty at A&M who had been under contract by the Army to help support the radiology needs as the Army was transitioning and picking up the mission from the U.S. Air Force. So with that, they had been contracted, and Sherm was now going to be the subsequent expert. But this decision, however, was a 2-year time frame, which actually had goods and bads. The good part was, yes, it's sufficient to earn a master's degree, but as active veterinary officers would know, it's insufficient to allow him to meet board certification requirements, which is our current standard for education and for promotion. But nevertheless, Sherm was willing to throw himself into this. As those of us in the dog program know, and I sometimes have to recount to others, yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks, but old dogs decide which tricks they're willing to learn. And so Sherm was willing to learn radiology and to get into it deeply, because think of that, he had to take advanced physics classes, had to take other courses, and to complete the requirements while learning just both the current and emerging technologies of routine radiography, us having done the chemical processing for development, but now as things are beginning to start to go digital, as ultrasound would come, and then also computed tomography or CT and MRI. Sherm developed a particularly strong interest and expertise in ultrasound, and was later frequently requested as a consultant to civilian veterinarians here in San Antonio and Bexar County, and also at the newly opened SeaWorld, which opened here in 1988. Over the next 2 decades, including my time as director of the Military Working Dog Veterinary Services, as mentioned from '96 to 2000, Sherm was a mainstay at Lackland at the Working Dog Center. His knowledge and expertise about the program, including overseas bike trips, was invaluable. See, the procurement process, as most of us realize, includes pre-purchase radiographic exams for prospective working dogs, and it fell upon Sherm to set the radiographic standards of quality for U.S. working dogs, which included, at one time, we actually had the USDA Beagle Brigade here. That was long ago and far away. And then subsequently, as it was, the FAA dogs, now the TSA dog. But with those are added too, as this was important, as many of these dogs did have inherited orthopedic diseases. Over this time, and even after our retirement, Sherm and I would see each other quite frequently, working together, whether on giant draft horses in Indiana or on miniature donkeys here in Texas. All of this brings back fond memories. Such memories will bring smiles again as one recounts his friendliness to so many people, regardless of their rank or their status. his predictability for giving people nicknames, his off tendency to be a little lax in his military attire, but never lax in his physical fitness. One recalls his running as well as him always doing push-ups with the soldiers when they needed it, even whether or not you were wearing a lead apron or not, but he would do push-ups with you. And so with that, one recalls also him talking and often hanging out with civilian and military dog handlers and trainers under the trees at the end of the duty day. I admired and was even envious of Sherm's ability to be a bridge builder, to connect so readily with other people. Similarly, I believe we depend on radiology to make connections, to bridge between our clinical suspicions, our clinical diagnoses, and ultimately diagnosis and prognosis. It is altogether fitting, therefore, that I believe we should dedicate this imaging suite today to one who has helped create this strong radiology support that we currently have within the Working Dog program. That person, namely Lieutenant Colonel Sherm Mathey. May we, in Sherm's memory, continue to make advances, to build bridges, to make connections, even when in today's society and even military, it may be difficult. May we continue to advance as he did and be challenged to excel even in new and difficult circumstances. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Mathey, Mr. Ian Mathey, an Army veteran and member of the Mathey family.
So I was happy to hear the term Doc Mathey. And I was happy to hear Colonel Moore talk about his laxness when it comes to military uniform. When I tell my friends or coworkers that I work with now, childhood friend Robert Barton over here, I've known forever, and I tell them that my dad was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, their immediate reactions is something out of Rambo. Like, it's just, crazy, and your dad must have a high and tight 24/7, and man, he must be super disciplined all the time. My dad, as many of you know, could not be more laid back as a human being, with the exception of his physical fitness. That was something that was very, very real. I had the opportunity to become a 91 Tango and serve in the Army, and I got the very challenging, difficult, miserable military assignment of San Diego, California, working with dolphins, sea lions, and beluga whales. My military uniform 4 days a week was shorts and flip-flops, literally, and I drove a boat in the Army. So it goes in par with my dad's philosophy about the uniform. So it all worked out well. And one of the things that I really enjoyed as a kid, and my two older brothers, and they would agree with this, truly could probably care less about animals as a whole. Like, there's some dogs, they have a connection with. But to Colonel Moore's point, my dad and I had a great love for horses. And at some point, my dad got steered the wrong direction by a veterinarian named Tex Taylor out at Texas A&M University. And Tex had an incredible infatuation, because it's beyond love, because I'll never understand it, I still don't, for mammoth and mini jackasses. I'm not saying donkeys, I'm sticking with the asses for a reason. And so my dad fell in love with the donkeys. Didn't matter what size, didn't matter. He was all about it. And I know there's some people in this room that were a part of my dad's 3 favorite things that he amazingly was able to combine in one. And that is beer, mules, and donkeys. Culminated, we call that Ass Fest. So for you guys that were able to be a part of that, it was a great time. You know, I was always impressed, and I use it in my profession now. I'm still in the veterinary industry, but I'm on the sales side. I was always impressed with my dad's ability to network. My oldest brother Darren and I talk about that because we've got the sales background. And he's just, it didn't matter if you were a brigadier general, for those in the room, and it didn't matter if you were a private, for those in the room. To Colonel Moore's point, which I think he learned in Vietnam as a Marine, but he treated everybody the same. And he taught me that too when I walk into a vet practice, to treat that receptionist like you would the owner, because you just don't know the connection between those two. And that was something that I took great pride in, because he just always made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And that's something that all of us can learn from. I will say this, though. This was not part of my speech until Colonel Moore said something. I'm like, I can't leave this out. I was told by the Colonel to tell a couple stories. So the enlisted in me is like, yes, sir. So the physics thing, that was really interesting to hear Colonel Moore say he had to take physics courses for the radiology and all that, which makes perfect sense. I don't know how many people know this about Doc Mathey, but before he became Doc Mathey, I see my aunt nodding her head, I'm sure she knows, he was at Ohio State, right? He got out of the Marine Corps, moved back to Ohio. Him and my mom were there at Ohio State. He was working at the pharmacy trying to get into vet school. Well, there was one class that kept stumping him, and it was physics. Now, to get into vet school, you had to have at least a B to get into vet school. And that was the only class that he was having trouble with. So the first time he took it, he got a C. They're like, this isn't going to fly, man. You got to get a B. So he's like, all right, I'm going to get a tutor. So he gets a tutor. This time frame is early 70s, something like that. I was born in Fort Leonard Wood in 78, so early 70s. Keep in mind, my dad is fresh Marine Corps, high and tight, still very much squared away. He goes and gets a tutor. The tutor that walks in the room is about 100 pounds overweight, tie-dye shirt, full beard, hair down to his butt. My dad's like, that's it. I'm going to go into poultry science. We're done. We're done. So this tutor comes in and works with my dad, and they work together all semester. The day before the exam, they keep going over these 15 same questions over and over. And the tutor's like, hey, you get it. Do you understand it? Are you okay with it? My dad's like, yeah, man, we've got a test tomorrow. Can we get on with some other stuff? He's like, okay, just making sure. The next day, what I failed to mention was the tutor was the TA also. The TA, the tutor, tie-dye and all, hands out the exams. My dad is in the back corner by himself. My dad's the last one to get his physics exam. He hands the test to my dad. My dad opens up the cover sheet, looks at the exam, looks up at this tutor. It's the exact same 15 questions that they had gone over. That tutor leans over to my dad and goes, you've got to miss at least one or two. So my dad missed 2, got a B on the test. He said he went and bought the guy a case of beer, sat at his footstep or at his doorstep, walked away, and never saw him again. I think that began the networking of my dad. Because everybody in this room, there's a lot of people in this room, let me say it like this, that are very worthy to have the honor that my dad has. But it was my dad's ability to connect with people that I really, really, really think made him stand out. And that's a big reason why we're here. I was at a work event a couple weeks ago, and there's a guy I work with I don't know well. It's like Zoom meetings. I met him once face to face. And I told him, I was asking when this meeting was because this event was going on. And Colonel, man, thank you so much for your efforts putting this together. Just holy cow. But it was finally happening. And I'm like, well, when's the meeting? Because I've got this. He goes, okay. I was talking about the dedication. And the guy walked over afterwards. And keep in mind, I do not know this guy well at all. He goes, man, your dad must have been one unbelievable person and a humble man to get that honor. And I thought about that for a second. Here's somebody that doesn't even know him. There's nothing about him. And those are the words that he chose. And I just think that really speaks volumes about my dad and why all of us are here. Because he's had incredible jobs. I mean, I had a great love for veterinary medicine, for animals, the whole nine. So I would go with him everywhere. Ranch calls, ultrasounding elephant feet, beluga whales, giraffes, killer whales, bottlenose dolphins, sea lions. Everybody knows about the SeaWorld component, right? And I asked my dad one time, I said, of all the jobs you had, what was your favorite job? And a normal, probably civilian veterinarian is automatically going to think SeaWorld. And without hesitation, he said the dog center. Because you're a part of something greater than yourself. And that was so important to him. He loved the people of the dog center. He loved the mission of what the dog center was doing. He just absolutely loved it. And he was very proud when I joined the Army, although, quick story and I'll be done, I promise. I just got out of basic training from Fort Leonard Wood. My folks picked me up. My brother Kevin is with us. What I didn't mention was Kevin is a Marine, former Marine. So we go out to the best place in San Antonio at the time, obviously, Taco Cabana. And we go have lunch, and I'm clean shaven, still, talking to girls, females. I'm still in that mindset. And so I'm just proud that I'm serving, and I know my dad's proud about it. And so we're in the middle there eating lunch. And my dad's sitting next to my brother Kevin. And he kind of looks at Kev, and looks at me, looks at Kev. And I see he's kind of giving me like a look, like almost like disappointment. I'm like, what the? Looks at me one more time, puts his arm around my brother, looks at me and goes, could have been a Marine, boy. So it was no secret how much my dad loved the Marine Corps. That was first in his heart. But it's just incredible because everyone here could either call him a colleague, more than likely a friend, a brother, a husband. But for a select few of us, he was dad. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Scott Chamberlain, Director of the Department of Defense Military Working Dog Veterinary Services.
Good afternoon. Welcome, distinguished guests, to recognize tangibly the legacy of Dr. Sherm Mathey and recognize how powerfully that legacy is that's bigger than all of us, as we have heard repeatedly. We have some of Sherm's family, current teen dog leaders from the TSA Canine Training Center, and I got to say, thank God y'all are getting paid this week. I saw that this morning on CNN. And the 341st and the 37th Training Group. And a literal who's who of the Vet Corps over the last 20 to 30 plus years. And there are tons of folks who couldn't even make it. Welcome to all, and thank you for being here. Thank you also to the team who coordinated this event. If you were part of this effort, we are going to recognize you later, whether you like it or not. But please stand up now for a dose of well-deserved applause. I think as we have all heard, those are the people that Sherm would have wanted called out. He'd be honored and blessed and grateful to us, his longtime friends and family, longtime brothers and sisters in arms, brothers and sisters in Christ, who he dearly loved, especially to the love of his life. But Sherm loved and welcomed everyone. It almost seems a contradiction. He was a decorated Marine who served in Vietnam. He was a crusty old Army Veterinary Corps officer. He was a radiologist. In case you didn't know how to tell an extroverted radiologist when you see one, they are looking at your shoelaces when they are talking to you instead of their own. He was a contradiction there. But Sherm loved and led everyone like family. Everyone here has told Sherm stories. Here's one of mine, how he welcomed me. Whenever I first came here as an extern, I was still in veterinary school, and before vet school, I'd been in the Navy. And I earned the second fastest nickname ever given by Sherm Mathey. I'd been in the Navy for 8 years. I had gone to vet school. First time I put a uniform back on was when I came here. So I was like, Roger this, Roger that, like I was talking on a radio or something. And I came here, I had these flashbacks, and he was like, within a day, I was Roger. In fact, that is the second thing that Robin said to me when I got here. For what it's worth, it's actually kind of funny how somebody beat me to the fastest nickname. I helped him process a veterinary corps officer named Captain Alberto Bonfiglio. He's a former Italian national, came here, and we kind of knew he was coming. And I went by, I was like, hey, Doc, this is Captain Bonfiglio. He's finally here. He's like, Tony! No, it's Alberto. Tony! Freaking beat me. We have a motto here at the Holland Veterinary Hospital that we live by. We take care of people so that we can take care of dogs. I'm honored and blessed to have served with Sherm, and honored and blessed as the current director to welcome you all here. I'm about to turn this over to Colonel Brooksby and the event team, but I want to say this. Please tell stories. When you're walking back the 150 meters or driving down the road to the hospital, later, when you're looking at the super cool bronze plaque, and every chance you get, soldiers, civilians, team dog members, everyone, tell stories. This is our legacy, both for Sherm and for all of us. And Sherm is a guy that truly represents someone who took care of people so that we could all take care of dogs. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, invited speakers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the dedication ceremony for the Lieutenant Colonel Warren Sherman Mathey Diagnostic Imaging Suite. Everyone is invited to the ribbon cutting and informal reception at the Lieutenant Colonel Daniel E. Holland Military Working Dog Hospital immediately following the ceremony. Please take time to speak with the members of the Mathey family and to share your remembrances in the scrapbook materials provided on the tables in the back and at the reception. Please rise and join in the singing of the Army song. Again. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the dedication ceremony. On behalf of Colonel Chamberlain and the Mathey family, we wish to thank you for your attendance at today's ceremony.